Well, welcome back. This is Civil War Stories number 4, and I've titled it Moving South, and you'll understand that as we look at the letters from Philo Conkling. But before we get to that, there's some things going on in the county that were noted in the paper, and one of them was a thank you to the ladies of Elkhart who provided a couple of boxes for that big dinner that we read about in the last video. It says, the loyal ladies of Elkhart, always among the first to work for the good of their country, prepared a couple of boxes of provisions for the soldiers at Alton, and had them ready to send along on Saturday last. The gallant boys from that place were never more delighted. Then we have our good friend Dr. Wimple going around the county and speaking, and we have an introduction here. It says, our friend Dr. Wimple of Mount Pulaski will speak at Broughton Schoolhouse Friday night next on the events of the day. It is well known that the doctor is a staunch Union man and bitterly opposed to traitors. He was one of the first Democrats in the county who denounced the infamous doctrine of secession, and one of the first to declare his fidelity to the present administration. Willing to submit to the constitutional decision of the people, he is at war with rebels everywhere. We love such manhood, such disinterested loyalty and patriotism. The doctor is an eloquent speaker and well posted on the crisis. Let the people all turn out to hear him. And in the next column, there is a reference to Dr. Wimple going to Mount Pulaski to put a talk, and I would imagine that all of these talks in his first round around the county were pretty much the same, introducing people to who he is and what his thinking is on secession. So those took place early in June of 1861. Now, the last we heard from Philo Conkling was that they were at Camp Du Bois in Alton, and they had just received orders to prepare to move farther south. So this letter was printed in the Lincoln Herald on the 13th of June, 1861. And think about that. That's not even, well, it's just exactly 2 months after the war started. And it says, from CAIRO, from our own correspondent, Camp Defiance, CAIRO, June 9th, 1861. Mr. Editor, at last I am enabled to send you a letter from within cannon sound of the enemy. We left Alton last Monday night about 11 o'clock and arrived here the next day about 2 o'clock. The whole walking population of Alton were out to bid us farewell, and many were the regrets expressed on account of our leaving. The most prominent citizens were loud in their praise of the conduct of the members of our regiment, while stationed there and were in some doubt as to whether any other regiment would be so acceptable to them as ours had been. As we passed Duncan's Island below St. Louis, the battery at that place fired a gun across the bow of our boat and ordered us to heave to. An explanation from our colonel sufficed as a passport to us, and soon we were steaming with increased speed down the broad and beautiful waters of the Mississippi. Our trip down was calculated to inspire us with the wildest enthusiasm. On both the Illinois and Missouri shores, we were greeted with hearty and prolonged cheers, accompanied by the elevation of the stars and stripes at several points. Our attention was particularly, and in no instance did we notice the least sign of secessionism. On the contrary, we were heartily greeted at all the towns on the river. A short distance above Cape Girardeau, a steamboat was discovered ahead of us, which on minute inspection proved to be the Louisiana, having on board Colonel MacArthur's regiment lately encamped at Caseyville and bound to CAIRO. Our boat, the city of Alton, not accustomed to being in the rear, made a preparation and soon passed Louisiana. Of course, there were no cheers, no words of encouragement as we glided by them. I bet. As we neared this place, the batteries on the Mississippi saluted us, which was returned by our cannon on board. As we rounded Bird's Point, the same thing occurred, and finally, as we landed at the levee here, It seemed as though the enthusiasm knows no bounds. We were immediately marched to our camping ground, pitched our tents, and are now enjoying ourselves to the extent of our ability, with more privileges and more advantages than we ever enjoyed at Camp Du Bois. On Friday night, a melancholy accident occurred, which damped the enjoyment of us all, and more especially the members of Company H. George Jacobs, a member of Captain Holden's company and formerly a resident of Lincoln, was drowned while bathing in the Ohio River. He was unable to swim and unfortunately ventured beyond his depth and sank before assistance could reach him. Every exertion was made by Colonel Cook and Captain Holden to recover his body, but the attempts were useless. About 10 a.m. today, while some soldiers were bathing near the spot where he sank, his body was seen to rise out of the water and was recovered. I understand that it will be sent home. The deceased stood high in the estimation of his officers and was beloved by his company. It seems hard that when he was so near meeting the enemies of his country, he should have been taken off in this untimely manner. But we bow with cheerfulness of him who is the God of battle and who holds us in the hollow of his hand, satisfied that his ways are the best. His friends may rest assured that everything that can be will be done for them by the officers of his company. It says, in my next, I will endeavor to give you some account of the fortifications of this place. There are about 9,000 soldiers here right now, and all the Confederate states can't take CAIRO. Yours truly, PHC. Then we have some local matters about activities around the county. A Union picnic at Lynn Grove. Lynn Grove is probably one of the school districts in the county at that time. The citizens of Lynn Grove in this county held a Union picnic at the above place Saturday last. It was well attended. Speeches were made by Mr. William McGalliard and Mr. Knowles of Middletown. McGalliard was from Lincoln. Dr. Whipple will address the citizens of Hurricane Point Friday evening. We love to meet the men who possess the magnanimity to ignore party in this hour. They are the men who live after the war is over and so we have the 7th Infantry at CAIRO, but they didn't stay there long. Let me do a couple more local things and then we'll get to his next letter here. Lieutenant Mason of Captain Holden's company arrived here yesterday from Mount Pulaski. He reports that he has procured 26 recruits, the number desired, and will therefore speedily return to Camp Defiance. So this is Company H that's recruiting in Logan County. The reason they're recruiting right now is that they're getting close to the 90-day limit on that first recruitment, and that's going to end on July 26th. So these officers have been talking to the men of who's going to stay and who's going to go home and who might change to a different regiment. And they did that a lot, especially at this time, at the end of that 90-day enlistment. Dr. Wimple is doing good service for the Union. He addressed a large meeting at Broadwell Friday evening last and knocked the secession logic into pie. The Broadwell Union boys expressed themselves highly pleased with the speaker and his speech. Mr. St. Clair also made an excellent address. St. Clair was from Mount Pulaski. Okay, we have a long letter here that I'm going to put off till the next video because it takes up one all by itself. It's a page and a half long, and it comes from a fellow that signed it by the name of Senex from Mount Pulaski, and it's a rather brutal challenge to Logan County residents who are supporting the secession. And we have some more local things here before we get to Philo's second letter. Local matters. Honorable William H. Herndon. We are personally assured that this gentleman will deliver the oration on the 4th at the Grove. Come then and hear Herndon. Come in wagons, come in buggies, come on horseback. Come any way you can get here. and help us celebrate the glorious anniversary of our national independence. Mr. Herndon will arrive on the evening train of the 3rd. But Philo's second letter here, I'm going to say the last because we have quite a few to get through. But this one was printed in the paper on July 4th, 1861. And it comes from Camp Joslin at Mound City. And he's going to explain to us why they're not at CAIRO anymore. And if you've seen CAIRO, and I'll show you some diagrams of the location of CAIRO and the fact that it's always wet there. Or it was at that time, anyway. From Camp Defiance at Camp Joslin, Mound City, Illinois. June 24th, 1861. Mr. Editors, we have been so busy moving for the past few weeks that I've not had time to keep you posted on how the Logan County boys were flourishing, and how, as we seem to be permanently fixed, or at least with no immediate prospect of change, I will try to be more punctual hereafter. Rumors having reached here that an attack was meditated on this place by some of the secessionists in Kentucky, General Prentice sent Captain Joslin's company of our regiment and our company from Colonel MacArthur's regiment to protect it. Colonel Cook, having learned that good quarters could be obtained for his whole regiment here, asked and obtained leave of General Prentice to march his regiment to this point. Accordingly, 1 week ago last Sunday, the order was given to be ready to march the next morning at 6 o'clock. Monday morning we left our uncomfortable quarters at CAIRO, and 10 o'clock a.m. found us in splendid quarters at Mound City, an immense brick block on the bank of the Ohio. The boys are delighted with the change, and we all feel under great obligations to Colonel Cook for having us moved here. We are only 6 miles from CAIRO, near enough to help them in case of an attack, and at the same time form a sort of advance guard in case the rebels cross the river above and march down. Our sick list has been materially decreased since we left CAIRO. The boys are anxiously looking for the 25th of July to come, as their time expires then. I think a good share of them will enlist for the war. Captain Estabrook and Captain Holden have already, each of them, a portion of their company already enlisted for 3 years, and will doubtless have no difficulty in filling up the required number. As an illustration of how we pass our time here, and of the manner of fun we have, I will try and give you a description of a mock trial of one of our men named Lawless, who was arrested on the charge of uttering treason against the United States and of slandering the schoolmistresses of New England by saying that they could not teach school out west. Sergeant Smith acted as judge, Jake Wright and his sword as sheriff, Dan Moore as constable, Bill Sturgis associate judge, S.W. Plinkett as clerk, Rush Deskins as prosecuting attorney, and Bill Klein as counsel for the prisoner. John Newton, Francis Green, A.J. Moses, J. Norsenarger, and J. Hedges as jurymen. The proof was overpowering. The testimony of Bob Howard, who had known the prisoner in the old country, and that of Matt Daniel, who had heretofore had business dealings with him, was direct and to the point. After counsel had summed up and the judge delivered his charge, the jury retired and brought in a verdict of guilty. I regret to say that immediately upon the rendition of the verdict, a mob entered the courtroom and took the prisoner by force from the officers of the law and liberated him. Much indignation was felt by the company, and no doubt that rioters will speedily be brought to justice. To write a habeas corpus has been issued for the prisoner, and he will have an examination before Major Hood Worthington tomorrow. I saw a statement of papers that in one of the New England companies, the aggregate height of 10 of the members amounted to 62 feet 3 inches. We can beat all such short men. Our company men measured today, and their height amounted to 63 feet. The tallest 6 foot 6.5 inches. The shortest was 6 feet 1 inch. Many Lincoln boys have requested me to ask you through your paper to return thanks for them to Lieutenant Buzzard of Elkhart for his uniform kindness towards them. I most cordially join with them in doing so. Being the recipient of many favors from him, I can heartily testify to his kindness. We will remember him. Yours truly, Philo Conkling. So the 7th Infantry got moved to the south of Illinois anyway, and we're going to start seeing some activity, some excursions into Kentucky and Tennessee. So that's enough for today. Next video will be the letter from Senex that I was telling you about. All right, this last little bit is going to be a little bit about Fort Defiance at the bottom end of Illinois at CAIRO. And here's a map, something of a map, no scale to it, but I'm sure that everything is in order here. But we have northern part of Kentucky, and you can see swamp. There's the southern part of Illinois, and you see swamp currently underwater. Same up here, it was swamp, swamp, swamp. The city of CAIRO is right in the middle of that big swamp. Here's Bird Point way down here on the Missouri side of the river, and this is Fort Defiance. Fort is wet. Let's take a look at the next diagram here. But just looking in here, cursor going again here. We got barracks along this edge. Got barracks along this edge. This white area along here says that it's planned to have a railroad and a road that goes all the way around the fort. So here's a diagram. This is a drawing of CAIRO, Fort Defiance. And you can see the Mississippi River in the background, the Ohio River in the foreground, and it looks like the ground isn't any higher than the water. But what I wanted to use this picture for was to show you the incursion of water in this area, in this area, and this area. It was a pretty wet fort, and you can understand why the soldiers were getting quite ill. And then we have what looks to be a railroad on top of a levee here. So it might have part of it. This is about 1861. This is the fall. Get down here to the bottom where you see that. It says fall of 1861. But that's Camp Defiance. At the time, the 7th Infantry was there. And here are the batteries that were along the Mississippi River and the Ohio River to warn off any Confederate boats coming up the rivers. Here's the parade ground for the fort. Had a dry spot, I guess. Now you know what Fort Defiance looks like. It wasn't much back then, but you can understand why the 7th wanted to move away from that area and why there was quite a bit of sickness going on at that time. So we'll end here, and we'll see you the next time.